So my personal creative project is essentially my own version of a choose-your-own-adventure story, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a story in the second person where you are a character in it, and you get to make choices that will determine what else happens in the story, and so you can get different endings and sort of things like that. It's usually a fantasy story. And so in my story, the reader is just a silly little ghost that's haunting a college campus trying to make friends. And of course, you get to make choices that determine the ending. And because of the amount of time I got to work on it, I put it on, it's just on a Google Doc. I wanted to put it in an actual notebook, but it was difficult enough for me to structure it and stuff like that. So it's actually here in this, and it's actually very easy because there's a format within Google Docs where if you just click a link, it can go down to a header, so it works out just as well when it's structured like that, because you just click and it sends you to the next part. And so I got the idea from my hobby of creative writing, and I love video games where you make choices that determine the outcome of the ending, sort of thing. So very storytelling based things. And although I've done creative writing in the past, I've never had to structure things like this. So I actually had to have a flow chart where it's you have this starting point and then it branches out, and just to keep track of all the endings. My greatest helper was my sister, who read over the pathways and things like that just to make sure that it made a little bit of sense. And she also let me bounce ideas off of her so that I wouldn't have anything too big and complicated for this time around. And it wasn't very difficult to decide what I wanted to do because I wanted to write something. And because I enjoy the storylines and the choosing your different pathways and stuff like that, a choose-your-own-adventure story seemed like a very fun idea, and it's also something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And the most difficult part was the time limit, because again, when you're working with writing and stories and stuff like that, if you have too big of an idea, it can take too long and get very complicated. So I had to cut back on a few different pathways that I could have put in there, but I had to keep it simple, and also motivation to write was a challenge because it's just, you just need ideas and stuff like that, and that doesn't always happen in a efficient, timely manner. And as for other creative projects, I want to try doing a larger scale choose-your-own-adventure story, so then I can play around with loops of things and more complex plot lines, instead of a sort of small story with just a few choices. But I'd also like to experiment with sort of telling a story through a scrapbook journal or diary entries that is still a choice-based story, if that makes sense. So that was my creative project, and I might have a link to it here, but we'll see. Thank you.